judge ridiculed black girl in court, but she revealed a hidden law and achieved the incredible. Maya Reynolds sat in the cramped courtroom, the air thick with whispered judgments. The rhythmic pounding of her pulse drowned out the murmurs of the crowd as she clenched her fists under the table. Accused of stealing a laptop she had never touched, she felt the weight of shame sink into her chest, heavy as lead. The judge, an older man with a disdainful smirk, loomed over her like a dark cloud, ready to unleash storms of mockery. "What makes you think you deserve the benefit of the doubt?" he sneered, inciting snickers from her classmates seated nearby. The embarrassment was raw, a harsh slap to her dignity. Maya couldn't understand how this was happening to her. Her mother's sacrifices, the tireless nights spent at the hospital, and all the small lessons about resilience seemed to dissolve into the air, replaced by a persistent gnawing dread. The courtroom, painted in oppressive shades of gray, mirrored her spiraling thoughts. Why wasn't anyone stepping in to help her? Surely they couldn't all believe she was guilty. In that instant, Maya felt utterly alone, like a ship adrift in a stormy sea, surrounded by echoes of betrayal, but beneath the shroud of humiliation, a quiet fire flickered. She refused to let this define her or tarnish her family's hard work. Retreating to her late grandfather's attic, the familiar scents marked the remnants of a life-long past. Dust danced in sunbeams as she rummaged through forgotten boxes, and then her fingers brushed against a worn law book. The pages whispered of endless possibilities, encased within lines of ink. As she skimmed through, a statute caught her eye, an obscure rule that appeared to shine like a beacon in her murky reality. Absorbed, she sat among the cobwebs and relics, the world beyond the attic faded away. The distant chatter of classmates and the judge's mocking laughter dissolved into the background. It was too long before Mr. Thorne, a local lawyer with a penchant for colorful ties, became an unexpected ally. His bizarre wardrobe could hardly disguise a brilliant mind eager to help, and together they dug deeper into the intricacies of the law, bolstering their defense with tenacity reminiscent of her mother's steadfast dedication. Tension escalated as the town buzzed with gossip, classmates who once cheered her on now whispering behind her back. The weight of their scrutinizing glances was suffocating. Yet, she could hear her mother's unwavering encouragement in her heart, feel her strength fueling her resolve. With each piece of information Mr. Thorne shared, Maya felt a cautious wave of determination wash over her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the courtroom once again, Maya stood firm, the tension a taut string ready to snap. As the judge's gaze bored into her, mocking her previous shame, she felt the law's power pulse within her. She readied herself, feeling every worry converging into a singular focus. Could she really outsmart a judge who thrived on belittling her? The pressure intensified, sweat threatening to break free at her temples, but she refused to waver. Maya took a breath, a whirlwind of fear and defiance swirling inside her. This was her moment, a chance to reclaim her dignity. The judge's smirk faltered just slightly as she began to speak, revealing the hidden law with a steady voice. For the first time, doubt flickered in the eyes of those who had cast her aside. Would the truth be enough to dismantle the oppressive forces stacked against her? Would it challenge everything? It was an uncertain waltz between justice and prejudice, and in that raw moment, Maya risked it all. The room shifted, anticipation crackling in the air, and as all eyes turned toward her, the question loomed: could one young girl truly change her fate? Maya's voice trembled slightly, but with each word, she regained her composure. "Your Honor," she began, using the formal address as if it were armor, "according to Section 212, a person can only be found guilty of theft if the prosecution can prove intent and possession beyond reasonable doubt." The courtroom fell silent, a blanket of astonishment layered over the previous mockery. Her pulse was a thunderous drumbeat in her ears, but within, a strange calmness enveloped her. Mr. Thorne had taught her the value of knowing the law, confidence brewed from knowledge. The judge raised an eyebrow, surprised by the sudden reversal of roles. Where he had mocked her before, a flicker of respect seemed to emerge in his gaze, albeit fleeting. Witnesses whispered, the tension in the room palpable. Maya inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the present. The discomfort at being the center of attention faded. This was no longer about the judge's laughter but about standing up for herself against a tide of unfair judgment. One by one, she began to methodically dismantle the prosecution's claims, pointing out discrepancies in testimonies and inconsistencies with the evidence. Every statement she made, every point she elucidated, acted like a puzzle piece falling into place, crafting a clear picture of her innocence. It was exhilarating to realize that she was not just an object of ridicule but a force wielding the very law intended to protect her. Each passing moment bolstered her resolve, steadily transforming the initial dread into an electrifying sense of purpose, yet, lurking beneath the surface was a gnawing apprehension. What would happen next? Would the judge acknowledge her arguments? The stakes felt impossibly high. She was aware that this battle would shape not only her future but how they all perceived a young black girl in the system. Her life was unfolding before her, unpredictable and fraught, but she felt determined to reclaim her narrative. The fear that had clutched her heart began to morph into something stronger. The judge interrupted her train of thought, his demeanor shifting slightly, as if intrigued by her fervor. "Miss Reynolds," he leaned closer, "you've presented some compelling points. However, I am still not convinced." His doubt sliced through Maya's newfound determination, but it ignited further resolve. "Your Honor, I understand your skepticism. But the very foundation of justice is built on fairness and truth. I deserve that, just as any other person does." She had deliberately chosen that word, deserve. It was a powerful reminder that she was not beneath anyone, nor was her voice any less valid. The judge's face revealed nothing, yet she could sense the room's tension thickening, her classmates' eyes widening as they began to process the gravity of her words. Maya's thoughts raced. She realized she was at the precipice of something transformative, not just for herself, but perhaps for all the girls like her who had felt voiceless, belittled, and unseen. Striking the gavel at her fate wasn't enough. She had to seize it with both hands. As she stood her ground, she felt the pulse of the law behind her like an unyielding tide, reality pushing forth against prejudice. The judge's gaze changed, curiosity sparking beneath his earlier disdain. Would this moment birth hope, or would the judge revert to type and uphold the verdict passed upon her, scarring her beyond recovery? Maya knew that the next few sentences could change everything. As she prepared for the potential storm, one question loomed in the back of her mind, challenging her resolve. What if she lost? What if her brave attempt to stand up for justice failed? But this time she wouldn't allow doubt to shake her foundation. No matter the outcome, she had already begun to shape herself into the person she always aspired to be, a person unwilling to submit to prejudice or silence. The air grew thick with anticipation as she snapped back to the present. "Your Honor," she continued with renewed vigor, "I refuse to let this injustice pass quietly. I refuse to be anyone's victim." In that moment, she set her sights on that initial spark of fire within her. The judge's expression remained inscrutable, but in that charged atmosphere, Maya felt the world hinge on a flicker, ready to tip into either fate, innocence revealed, or injustice perpetuated. And as she steadied her breath, a chilling realization settled within her. This was only the beginning, the first act in a much larger unfolding drama she had yet to navigate. What other truths lay in the shadows, waiting to be unearthed? Maya felt the weight of the room shift with her declaration. Eyes widened, whispers ceased, and she could almost taste the tension hanging in the air. Could it be that she was no longer merely an underdog? Could she truly be a challenger, a fighter of justice? The realization sent a jolt through her. However, with that energy came a creeping dread. Would she have the stamina to carry this fight beyond today? "Miss Reynolds," the judge said after a long pause, his voice steady but edged with challenge, "if you are so confident in your assertions, what evidence do you have that proves this so-called injustice?" His words struck her hard, anchoring her in the reality of her situation. She thought of the stack of notes she had crammed into her bag the night before, notes that had accumulated over countless hours of research, discussions, and revelations with Mr. Thorne. This was her crucible, the time to invoke all the knowledge she had wrestled from textbooks and her careful analyses. Your Honor, she began, her voice firm yet measured, the testimony of several witnesses clearly contradicts the prosecution's claims. For instance, Mrs. Jennings, a member of the community, testified that she saw another student speaking with the alleged stolen items moments before the incident occurred. Their testimonies align in time, and yet, inexplicably, the prosecution chose to ignore this. She could feel the momentum building, like a wave forming as it rolled toward the shore. The judge's brow furrowed slightly, as if reckoning with her pointed rebuttal. She pressed on, noting the slight shift in his expression, the flickers of realization. This wasn't only about proving her innocence, it felt increasingly like an articulation of a larger injustice, perhaps even an indictment of the system itself. And if I may add, she continued, the police report failed to mention any surveillance footage that could corroborate where those items were at the time in question. That evidence is crucial, Your Honor, and yet it was conveniently overlooked, potentially skewing the case against me. Maya felt her mind racing, ideas vaulting over one another with urgency. This was more than a legal battle, it was a chance for transformation. With every fact she constructed, every mindful choice of words, she found pieces of herself she didn't even know she held: strength, strategic thinking, and a voice that held weight. The judge leaned back, scrutinizing her. Interesting points, Miss Reynolds. You seem to have unearthed details that, if proven true, could indeed challenge the prosecution's case. Her heart surged with a rush of adrenaline. She had ventured beyond mere survival, she was confronting the injustice head-on, reshaping the narrative of not just her case but potentially paving a path for others, yet beneath the thrill lay a coldening fear. What if the evidence she had gathered fell short? What if she wasn't enough to tip the scales? She gripped her notes tighter, cringing for a fleeting moment as insecurity threatened to seep back in. Your Honor, I implore you to consider the implications of ruling against me, she spoke passionately. The ramifications extend beyond this courtroom. They echo into classrooms, into communities, into lives. It's not just about one girl's battle against a false accusation, it's a fight for everyone who has been silenced or ignored. The judge stared, his expression giving away nothing. Silence enveloped the courtroom, but within Maya, a fire roared. She had stepped into her power, illuminating the darkness surrounding her. Miss Reynolds, he finally said, I need a moment to consider this. As he retreated, Maya turned toward her classmates, her friends' faces showing support, concern, and newfound respect. This wasn't simply a moment of contention, it was a challenge of authority, and she, against all odds, had dared to meet it. The anticipation hung thick once more. The judge's return would determine everything she had fought for today. Would he validate her efforts, or silence her once again? One thing was clear, the fight for justice hadn't ended, it had only just begun, and Maya was at the heart of it. But as she steadied her breath, another question clawed its way to the forefront of her mind: what additional obstacles lay ahead in her pursuit of the truth? The stakes were rising, and she felt the pull of something much larger than herself. Maya's chest tightened as the judge finally returned to his seat, his expression inscrutable. Around her, the collective breath of the courtroom seemed to rustle like leaves in a storm, each soul anxiously awaiting his verdict. For a moment, she replayed her own impassioned words, a frantic internal tape that questioned if they had the weight necessary to turn the tide. Miss Reynolds, the judge began, his voice resonating through the hushed courtroom, you've put forth compelling points, yet this is not merely a matter of evidence, it's also one of overall integrity in our judicial process. His firm gaze cut through the tension like a knife. But I will allow for further evidence to be examined in light of your most recent assertions. As he spoke, relief flooded Maya, sparking a new fire within her. She wasn't just fighting for her own innocence, she had moments ago redefined how she perceived and approached authority. It was a gut realization that her role in the world could expand beyond the confines of self-preservation, she could strategically confront and shift systemic narratives, yet, the path was unclear. The judge's ruling had momentarily staved off impending disaster, but she couldn't ignore the potential repercussions of opening this Pandora's box. The thought loomed, what would the backlash be from those who benefited from maintaining the status quo? Her mind raced with future possibilities. Each one invoked a spectrum of emotions, the fear of being isolated battling the exhilaration of standing boldly in her truth. This wasn't just a court case, it felt like a threshold. With renewed focus, Maya retraced her plan, poring over her notes through the whirlwind of self-discovery. The court might have granted her a chance, but she knew that she couldn't rely solely on the knowledge others had bestowed upon her. She needed to dig deeper, reflecting on the perspectives and insights she'd gleaned from long conversations with Mr. Thorne late into the night. An idea began to take shape, a strategy that emerged not from raw research, but from the depths of her lived experience. The following days would be pivotal. She reached out to Mrs. Jennings once more, hoping for a clearer timeline of the events. Each piece of information she extracted from witnesses morphed into not just a building block for her case but a foundation for her emerging identity. She began practicing her delivery, refining her method of communication. It felt empowering to shape her narrative in a way that made it not just convincing but impactful, a personal manifesto against the systemic failings she had seen. Returning to her classmates, who had become her unexpected supporters, she tested the coherence of her arguments. Each practice session revealed facets of her character she hadn't honed before: resilience, clarity, strategic foresight. It ignited something deep within her. An increasing awareness of her own capabilities surged into her actions. These moments granted her a fresh sense of agency, making her feel less like a pawn in a game and more like a player moving towards the endgame. But as she drew strength from those she was now aligning with, there was an unsettling thought that lurked behind every supportive face. The more she pushed against injustice, the more those who thrived in it could retaliate. Doubts surfaced again. Did they know how much she had to lose? Would she be able to stand resilient in the face of the powerful resistance that might soon retaliate? With each layer of preparation, a potent clarity emerged. Her fight was only just beginning, and it was proving to be more complex than she ever imagined. As she polished her arguments, one question persisted: who would really stand with her when it came time to confront the unseen players pulling the strings? The moment of confrontation loomed closer, the echo of her own voice ringing with challenge. In her next move, the stakes would reveal not just her emerging role as a strategist but test the very foundation of everything she had come to stand for. Would she summon the courage to face potential consequences head-on? Would she be able to unearth deeper truths buried not just within her case, but within herself? Maya awoke the next morning to a cascade of sunlight streaming through her window, illuminating the wake of her restless thoughts. The weight of the day ahead pressed down upon her like an anvil. As she sipped her coffee, she found herself focusing on the questions that had swirled after the judge's ruling. Those uncertainties now felt like shadows, creeping into every corner of her mind. Today would not only require her to present evidence, it would demand her to embody the very integrity and tenacity she sought to evoke in others. Determined to forge ahead, Maya mapped her day meticulously, outlining meetings and phone calls with newfound purpose. She needed to bolster her arguments with credible insights while simultaneously aiming to uncover further evidence. The uncertainty about how the people behind the scenes would respond gnawed at her, but she couldn't allow fear to dictate her moves. She would not back down when there was so much at stake, both for herself and for the undeniable truth she was championing. Maya decided to call Mr. Thorne before her meetings began. His clashes with authority and wealth had shaped her own understanding of power dynamics. What do I need to avoid as I gather more evidence? She asked, her voice steady despite the tumult within. Be cautious, Maya, he said, the weight of his experience echoing through the line. Digging deeper can provoke those who want everything to remain as it is. Your pursuit for justice and truth can put a target on your back. But remember, it's crucial to remain strategic. Don't reveal your hand too early. His words struck deep. Navigating this minefield would require not just intelligence but also strategic restraint. That day, she spent hours reviewing case details, piecing together moments that could bolster her defense. With each discovery emails, documents, or witness accounts, Maya pieced together a puzzle far larger than she had anticipated. It not only concerned her case but bore witness to the intricate web of complicity surrounding it. An unexpected exhilaration coursed through her veins. She was becoming an investigator in her own right, emerging as a formidable force against pretenses long-lived, yet, something inside her stirred unease. For every advantage she sought to carve for herself, certain truths lingered in her mind, unrelenting. Were these the answers she sought, or was she merely scratching the surface of a deeper issue? An unsettling notion urged her to confront her motivations yet again. She recalled how she had initially joined the debate, fueled by an instinct for self-preservation. Now, she was igniting a revolution within her. Later in the week, during another session with her classmates, uncertainty came alive in the air. "Every time you stand before that judge, you're not just representing yourself," Maya told them, her voice unwavering. "You embody a truth that challenges the system. You need to connect with that, to remind everyone involved that justice is not simply a court proceeding, it's a necessity." As she spoke, an epiphany dawned. The very act of eloquently presenting her case was an act of defiance. The stakes had escalated. It was not merely her future on the line but a clear statement against the systematic disenfranchisement she'd witnessed. With each framing of her arguments and each rehearsal before her peers she cemented her resolve, redefining what it meant to confront her fears. She discovered her voice wasn't merely for defending her innocence, it could transform into a clarion call for justice, an assertion against systemic wrongs. Days turned into nights, and with every tick of the clock, the urgency swelled. But amid this preparation, a flicker of doubt returned. What if the truth she fought so hard to uncover shattered aspects of her own identity? The court was approaching, the stakes monumental, and her heart wrestled with the knowledge that each confrontation would reveal not only the injustices surrounding her but would also mirror her own struggles against complacency. The time had come to face something beyond mere legal defense. As she scoured her evidence one last time, Maya contemplated the truth waiting to be unleashed. What if the very evidence she sought to present also unraveled a more profound secret, one that challenged who she believed herself to be? As the hours dwindled before her court appearance, Maya felt the tension wrapping around her like an unyielding vice. Each breath came more slowly than the last, the weight of expectation not just from those around her, but from within, becoming an almost palpable force. Determined to keep her thoughts organized, she jotted down notes, categorizing her findings into two columns: the evidence she would present and the arguments she would make. Yet, as she scanned the paper, her mind started wandering, a reflection of doubt mixed with resolve. What if her evidence was more explosive than she anticipated, capable of overturning not just the ruling but perhaps the fabric of her own make-believe existence? Her instincts urged her to push deeper into her findings, revealing connections that linked her case to larger malpractices. Did those responsible for her plight operate with the belief that their misdeeds would remain unchecked forever? The thought ignited something primal, the burning desire to expose and destroy the complacency that had allowed these injustices to flourish. She steeled herself as she replayed Mr. Thorne's advice in her mind. Strategic restraint. With this mantra pumping through her, Maya crafted her narrative with precision. Every detail mattered, one misplaced word could unravel hours of preparation. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. As she made her way to the courtroom, her heart raced, not just from anxiety but anticipation. Today she would become a conduit for change, being armed with her carefully curated evidence. The questions weighing on her no longer felt insurmountable. Instead, they transformed into a valuable framework, each moment a stepping stone leading her before the judge. Upon entering the courtroom, she met the eyes of various challengers, each one representing either an ally or an adversary in her labyrinthine journey. The judge settled into his chair, exuding gravity, and the weight of authority filled the room. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the collective energy, recognizing this as a moment of profound significance not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever faced injustice. As she rose to present her case, the initial quiver in her voice faded to a steady rhythm. She connected her findings seamlessly, intertwining personal anecdotes with hard evidence, igniting a spark in the room. It was then she realized she was not just defending herself, she was advocating for the unheard voices echoing through the courtroom. But in the midst of her fervent argument, the judge interjected, his voice laced with sarcasm. Your claims are commendable, miss, but what makes you think you're equipped to challenge the status quo? His ridicule cut through the air, igniting the very doubts she had worked tirelessly to suppress. In that moment, a choice hovered before her: she could retreat, surrendering to the weight of authority, or she could rise, unearthing the hidden law that would empower her narrative. For a heartbeat, she weighed the implications of both paths. Her mind cascaded through the documents she had discovered. A law, obscure yet powerful, presented itself, aligning with the truths she felt coursing through her veins. Then, feeling her heartbeat harmonizing with the urgency of the moment, she made her choice. I possess the truth bound to this case, she declared forcefully, feeling determination surge through her. And I refuse to be slandered into silence. This evidence is more than a collection of data, it embodies the voices you ignore. The room fell silent, every eye fixated on her with rapt attention. In that instant, Maya felt the gravity of her journey crystallizing into a singular moment of clarity. She had transformed from a mere defendant into a defender of justice, yet, as she prepared to fully reveal the hidden law, uncertainty flickered in the back of her mind. What would be the repercussions not only for her case but for her identity? This was merely the beginning of a much larger battleground, a gamble that would change her life forever, and as she stood before the judge, the weight of truth pressing against her chest, she could not escape the approach of an even harsher reality. Would what she uncovered lead to empowerment or destruction? The impending revelation loomed ahead, challenging her very sense of self. Maya's heart raced, the weight of the room's anticipation enveloping her as she prepared to disclose the hidden law. In that charged silence, she could feel the collective breath of doubt and disbelief held tightly by those present. The judge's condescending expression twisted into a mask of curiosity, a slight arch of his brow suggesting he sensed something significant brewing beneath her surface. Taking a moment to gather herself, she recalled the countless hours spent combing through legal texts and case studies, ferreting out information that eluded the untrained eye. This was not just about defending herself, each piece of evidence was a ripple in a much larger pool of wrongdoing. The implications of uncovering this law reached far beyond her own case. It was a weapon wrapped in ambiguity, capable of shattering their comfortable facades. The law I speak of, she began slowly, drawing everyone's focus, is defined under Statute 25, articulating that any retaliation against a whistleblower is not merely unethical but illegal. The words felt electric as they poured from her lips. This was precisely what happened to me when I dared to challenge the mismanagement that affects so many. The judge's expression shifted. There was recognition, perhaps even a hint of concern, as he balanced the implications of her revelation with the burden of authority he wielded. Maya seized that moment, quickening her pace. Whistleblowers are protected under this law. My situation wasn't merely an isolated incident, it's reflective of a systemic issue that fosters silence for the convenience of the powerful. As Maya delved deeper, articulating the ramifications of statutory protections, her internal dialogue wrestled with fears that lingered just beneath the surface. What if challenging the system put her at risk? Stripped down to her essence, she realized her every move mattered, not just for herself but for countless nameless souls she represented. Her voice grew bolder, punctuated with unyielding conviction. To ignore these statutes would embolden malevolent practices. An unchecked system breeds contempt and a culture of fear. Today, I refuse to be silenced. I stand strong not just for my truth but for all who have been told to conceal their injustices. Yet, with each confident declaration, doubts gnawed at her resolve. Would they embrace her evidence or sweep it under the rug, dismissing her as just another voice in a chorus of dissent? The judge's earlier sarcasm echoed in her mind, a reminder of how easily authority could crush the vulnerable. Suddenly, tension erupted in the courtroom as her words sparked murmurs amongst those present. Some faces reflected understanding, while others contorted in disdain. She locked eyes with a few faces in the audience, seeing one or two supportive nods. This was no longer just a courtroom, it was a battleground for dignity and justice where the stakes were supremely high. Just as she felt a shift, a turning point in her advocacy, a glimmer of self-doubt encapsulated her. She was about to challenge not only institutional authority but her very place within it. The implications were monumental. Was she truly equipped to take this enormous leap? As she opened her mouth to escalate her argument, the judge leaned forward, a stern gaze etched on his face. Do you understand what you're implicating, miss? By asserting that there is a legal basis for your claims, you raise the specter of accountability for others. With those words, Maya felt a pulse of determination rally within her. This wasn't just about her case, it was a manifestation of all her pent-up frustrations, her tireless effort to untangle the pervasive webs of corruption. She started to respond, but then paused, her heart thundering with the gravity of both the moment and her emerging resolve. It wasn't merely about winning today, it was about transforming herself from a passive participant into an active architect of change. Your Honor, I'm not just challenging procedures, I'm laying the groundwork for fairness and equity. Her tone sharpened, and today, I will not let this opportunity slip away. Little did she know that the depths of her statement would not only set the stage for this trial but ripple out into unforeseen challenges that would test her limits even further. As she prepared to unveil more evidence, the courtroom air shifted, heavy with the tension of possibilities that loomed ahead. Would this revelation catalyze a movement or precipitate her personal undoing? One thing was certain, she stood at the brink. The time had come to face everything she feared head-on, challenging the entire system that had tried to keep her quiet. The stakes had never felt higher. Maya sensed the space around her pulsing with a new energy, a mixture of trepidation and fierce resolve that coursed through her veins. The murmurs in the courtroom surged like a rising tide, each wave carrying the weight of judgment and apprehension. This was a moment both exhilarating and fraught with peril, for all her preparation, doubt threatened to invade her clarity. If this revelation created ripples that submerged the very foundations of authority, would she be ready to navigate the repercussions? The judge's gaze bore into her, a quiet challenge whispering beneath his scrutinizing veneer. The fear of reprisal tightened its grip, but then she recalled the countless individuals who stayed silent, paralyzed by the same fears she faced. She couldn't allow herself to shrink back now, her mind spun with strategy. This was now larger than her case, this was about igniting the unspoken courage in others who dared to raise their voices. The legislation she highlighted was a lifeline, one she had been desperate to grasp, and she wouldn't let it slip away. In the midst of self-reflection, Maya caught a glimpse of her own potential, an influential powerhouse armed not just with knowledge of the law but with an unyielding spirit. She had spent years refining her understanding of these legal nuances, balancing the fine line between idealism and practicality. Each late-night study session had not only prepared her for this very battle but had also crystallized her identity. No longer was she the faint-hearted girl questioning her worth, she was becoming a formidable force, a rightful challenger, someone ready to reshape her narrative. As anticipation crackled in the air, she projected her voice, channeling the strength amassed from both her struggle and the unwavering belief in justice. You must understand, she continued with renewed vigor, that whistleblowing is essential to the integrity of our systems. Accountability will only come when we are brave enough to expose wrongdoing, and it is my responsibility to shed light on the darkness. A ripple of agreement flowed through some supporters in the audience, fueling her confidence. For the first time, she truly recognized the power of her voice, not simply as a means to defend herself but as an instrument of change. This moment had the potential to galvanize others who had long felt alone. Yet, the labyrinthine politics of the courtroom loomed. She could feel the weight of stares from opposing counsel, eyes narrowed in strategic calculations. The stakes of her revelations could threaten not only her case but the very fabric of their established order. That knowledge gnawed at her, intensifying her mustering resolve. A moment's hesitation could unravel everything she built up to this point. And the instant that followed, she let go of uncertainty, embracing courage. She understood that advocacy entailed not just a battle of legalities but a war against ingrained fear. The well-being of the whistleblowers and the integrity of the law rested on her shoulders. Your Honor, she addressed the judge again, my objective is not just personal vindication. I wish to unveil a truth too many choose to ignore. If my singular act of candor leads to a reassessment of the law and its enforcement, then the cost of my own vulnerability is worthwhile. The judge's expression softened momentarily, indicating he grasped the magnitude of her words, but the hardened resolve of the system refused to waver entirely. What she offered was addictive yet dangerous, a challenge riddled with threat. As the judge prepared to respond, Maya felt the air go thick with anticipation, each heart present suspended on a precipice of change. Would they greenlight her revelations, or shut them down with the same indifference that had muted so many before her? The tension was suffocating, promising either monumental change or crushing defeat, and for Maya, there would be no going back. This singular moment could pivot her trajectory, one way or another, and she braced herself for whatever was to come. Would her courage sculpt a new chapter, or were the threads of her aspirations destined to fray under pressure? In that silence, she realized she was no longer just a participant, she was an architect confronting the complexities of consequence. The moment had arrived as her heart raced and her breath caught. As the judge leaned forward to deliver his verdict, Maya prepared herself. Her fears no longer controlled her, she embraced them as companions in this profound journey. What awaited her on the other side of this verdict remained cloaked in uncertainty, but for the first time, she felt ready to contend with what came next. Would this defiance spark a transformation that resonated beyond the courtroom, or would it redefine her as a target instead of a champion? Maya's breath caught as the judge opened his mouth, the silence before the verdict suffocating, charged with a weight she had never felt before. She could see the tension rippling through the gallery, the audience suspended between hope and apprehension. In this crucible of moment, it was as if time itself hesitated, feasting on the possibilities that hung delicately in the air. "Ms. Collins," the judge began, his tone steady, "while I appreciate your courage in bringing this matter to light, I must remind you that the implications of what you propose are profound." A tightness constricted around Maya's chest. She felt as though an unseen hand was squeezing the air from her lungs, a premonition of rejection tightening its grip. After all that she'd invested her late-night strategies and painstaking research, how could this moment hinge on a mere acknowledgement of courage? But then, like a breath of fresh air, clarity cut through her anxiety. It wasn't merely about winning, it was about embodying change, standing firm in the knowledge that her voice mattered. A flicker of hope ignited as she shifted her posture, grounding herself in her newfound strength. The judge continued, pausing for dramatic effect, "The law protects whistleblowers from retaliation for a reason." A murmur circulated through the room as the audience processed his agreement. "However," he continued, "the challenge lies in distinguishing protection from the consequences of one's actions." There it was a critical juncture that struck her. What if the very definition of accountability was at stake here? Without fully understanding the implications, she could sense the shifting tides of support. Maya felt the embers of determination ignite anew. She had confronted the system in its rawest form, and now she had the opportunity to reshape its narrative. "Your Honor," she interjected, her voice steady but passionate, "with more than one whistleblower coming forward, we stand at the threshold of redefining what accountability means. It's not just about legal repercussions, it's about fostering a culture where honesty is not penalized but celebrated. This court can set a precedent." The words surged through her, vivid and bold, an offering that transcended her case. Eyes locked with the judge, she watched his expression shift ever so slightly. That moment of connection felt like a spark breaking through the monotony of the legal labyrinth. The judge's face softened, reflecting the gravity of her appeal. He didn't respond immediately, tilting his head while weighing the nuance, and for a fleeting moment, she saw understanding flicker in his gaze, but the opposition was already positioning itself, and she felt the heat of their analysis crawl over her skin. They were the keepers of tradition, the ones who thrived on the status quo. Their disinterest in change was palpable and dangerous. For them, her words were threats, attempts to upheave an empire built over decades. As the courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs, Maya found resolve in her resolve. The path ahead was charged with potential, yet layered in risks. Would speaking the truth about what transpired within those hallowed walls elevate her into a beacon of inspiration, or would she merely become a solitary figure painted in contempt for challenging authority? Just then, the judge broke the silence with a nod. "I appreciate your contributions to this discourse, Ms. Collins, and while the law may not always bring immediate change, it is through challenges like yours that we might move towards greater equity." A round of gasps filled the room, and Maya felt her heart soar. However, he added, his tone now serious, the court will take time to deliberate on this matter carefully. We cannot rush decisions that might alter the face of our legal frameworks. Each word punctured the buoyancy she had felt moments earlier, tethering her dreams to the confines of an uncertain future. As she left the courtroom that day, the weight of possibility mingled with apprehension. Each conversation, each pairing of eyes that met hers, echoed with a single thought: what consequence would her courageous act invite? Through the chaos of her thoughts, one clear question lingered: would the legacy of her fight be one of hope or derision? Maya stepped into the world outside, cloaked in anticipation and determination. Breaking down systemically entrenched fears was no small task, but she was resolute. The stakes had skyrocketed, but so had her longing for justice. What awaited her as the next chapter unfolded loomed, promising both peril and opportunity, a crossroads that would define not only her career but her essence as a force of change. Maya stood on the courthouse steps, a palpable tension thrumming through her veins. The echo of the judge's words reverberated in her mind. Deliberate carefully. The anticipation built as she grasped the weight of ambiguity surrounding her future. She was no longer merely a girl accused, she had transformed into a voice for justice, ready to reclaim her narrative and challenge a system bent on silence. Gone were the days of feeling invisible, overshadowed by fear and humiliation. In their place, a surging confidence arose, carved from hours spent poring over laws, strategizing with Mr. Thorne, and articulating her truths. Every moment leading up to this point had forged her into a formidable force, one unwavering in her pursuit of equity and justice. It was no longer just about her case, it was about redefining possibilities for herself and those who mirrored her struggles. Days turned into weeks as she awaited the court's decision, each click of the clock amplifying the urgency of her dreams. Maya took the time to strategize her next moves, reflecting on her growing strength as she began to engage with local advocacy groups. She shared her story widely, not only to gather support but to inspire others to unearth their truths. It was invigorating to witness once fearful faces transforming, gaining a newfound sense of purpose. Here she was, aligning her journey with others, the seed of change was blooming within her. Then, the decision finally arrived. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as she approached the bench, this time standing not as a mere defendant but a symbol of resilience. The judge opened with clarity. "Miss Reynolds," he said, surprising even Maya with the absence of sarcasm, "in recognizing your contributions, I'm compelled to re-evaluate not merely your case but the broader implications of vivifying accountability." A thunderous gasp swept through the audience, rendering her momentarily mute. Empowerment emanated like warmth from within, the ruling came down in her favor, the evidence she tirelessly assembled validated her claims. But beyond just her own liberation, the verdict served as a clarion call for change, rippling through the community, breathing life into the silent. She felt a grounding sense of purpose, her existence had been validated. This was more than a personal vindication, it signaled the beginning of a movement toward accountability in a system that had for too long typified retaliation over protection. Maya emerged from the courthouse, overwhelmed with both relief and purpose. A community of supporters awaited her, each face lighting up with admiration. Her action went beyond self-defense, it sparked a broader discourse about justice and representation. With newfound urgency, she vowed to continue her advocacy, inspiring others to challenge the status quo. The courtroom, once a place of ridicule, had become a sanctuary of resilience. In the months following the ruling, Maya articulated her experience, establishing workshops where young people learned their rights within the legal system. Serving as a mentor, she harnessed her empowerment into tangible action, standing alongside her peers, transforming hurt into a compelling narrative of survival. The growth was exponential. Maya could no longer shy away from her identity and experiences. Instead, she emerged as a leader and educator, breathing life into a legacy she would pass forward. As her capacity for advocacy grew, so did her self-awareness. She could not only articulate her needs but also act as a voice for those still muted by fear. The fight didn't end with the ruling, it had only just begun. Reflecting on her journey, Maya felt a surge of accomplishment. Struggles had morphed into triumphs, embarrassment transformed into recognition. The girl once filled with trepidation now stood tall, emboldened by her experiences, driving change within her community and exemplifying the incredible power of self-advocacy. She had not only conquered the courtroom, she had reshaped an entire narrative that would ripple outwards into future generations. As she looked towards the horizon, proud and passionate, Maya leaned into her newfound purpose, ready to inspire others while forging her path, one built on courage, tenacity, and unwavering belief in justice. Now, if you've experienced the thrill of transformation alongside Maya, it's time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every engagement counts. Comment your reactions and theories about Maya's inspiring journey or share your own. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel empowered by stories of individual growth and triumph. You need to be part of this movement. Don't wait even one more second to share your support. Together, we amplify voices that demand change.